Welcome to the second video podcast about case conceptualizations. This one is going to be an example. It's an oral example versus what you're going to be doing, which is writing them. So when you write your case conceptualization, that's going to be in paragraph form, right? And you're going to write some more details into your case conceptualization than I am going to speak. So this is just an example to get you started. All right, so it's time to conceptualize. So you need to read Zula's case and you need to have the outline in front of you to understand what I'm doing. So before you begin any conceptualization, and particularly before you begin looking for resources for your midterm and your final, which you should have well ahead of time, don't wait till the last minute to do it, you need to determine the main concepts of your theory base. What are the main things that you need to hit? You need to understand the vocabulary, the concepts, how people are thought about, how change occurs, those kinds of things. You have to understand those things about your theory base before you start your conceptualization. And you're going to use professional resources, which are journal articles, books from theorists, videos of theorists. Do not use online articles, online sites, or textbooks. The reason you don't use the online sites is because for the majority of the time they're wrong, they're incorrect, and students lose points. And I can usually figure out which sites that you got that information from rather than getting the information from a credible source. For the discussions for this class, you're going to use your regular textbook as a source and the video podcasts and things like that. For your midterm and your final, you will have to have professional resources that back up everything that you say. So you need to go beyond that. And again, no textbooks and none of the online, psychology today, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of people out there that have blogs and things, and then they're in a lot of times that they're incorrect. So you need to go for professional resources. All right, so we're going to go through Zula's case from an attachment framework. Because I'm an attachment, that's my theory base, so that's the one I'm going to choose to use. Hopefully you've had a chance to read Zula's case. So, for descriptive data, she's a 19-year-old white female, low socioeconomic status, right? That just tells me who she is. Her relevant history, now remember, you don't want to restate the whole case here. So one of the things I'm going to say, particularly for attachment theory, is that she has a background of moving between her mom and relatives, as well as anger issues and blaming others for her faults. She has a lack of support, social support specifically, emotional or physical, from others. So she's a new mom. She was referred by her pediatrician, and because she's not bonding with her baby. So that's a relevant history, and that's like a couple of sentences, right? Versus the entire page that you read. Environmental factors are that she lives alone. She has no support system. I kind of inferring that she doesn't work right now. And she's low socioeconomic status. Okay. Personality dynamics and strengths is that she's independent. She loves her baby, and Zula has educational goals, and she has things that she wants to accomplish. So she's very motivated in that way. It's really easy in these things to say negative things about your client. That's not what this is about, okay? So Zula's issue, from her point of view, the presenting problem, the thing that she's come in with, right, is that she would like the doctor to back off and leave her alone and let her be a parent, right? Because that's really why she's there. She's there because she has to be, not because she wants to be. She also wants to go to school, and she's not sure. She's still not sure she wants to be a mom. Now, for those of you that are thinking, oh my God, how can you have a baby and not want to be a mom? This is something that is pretty typical for new moms. It's overwhelming, it's exhausting, and Zula has no help at all. So in the middle of that, with a young baby that's not sleeping and all of these other things going on, and having financial issues, it makes a lot of sense that she's not really sure that the best decision was to keep her baby. That does not mean that the presenting problem is whether or not she should put up her baby for adoption. That is not the issue. The issue here is she's a doctor that referred her that she wants to let her alone. She wants to go to school, and she's trying to figure out what she wants to do. Right? So your bias coming into this would be she should put the kid up for adoption. That's up to the client. That is not up to you. And right now, that's not on the table. Okay? All right, so the cultural considerations. Again, I just want some basics, one sentence. She's white, she has low socioeconomic status, and she's a single mom. And all of those things will contribute to where she is in terms of the resources that are available to you and what her life is like and how society thinks about her. She's also young. Ethical considerations. I'm just going to do 2 right now. There are more than that, but again, I just want a couple of sentences from you, just insight that you know what you're talking about is a basic understanding, right? There's confidentiality issues with the doctor who referred her, so I'm going to have to be very careful to make sure that I maintain confidentiality with Zula. The doctor might just want to know how many sessions Zula had, something like that. I can do that with Zula's permission if she signs a consent form for me to release that information to the doctor. I cannot violate her confidentiality and talk to the doctor about what Zula talked about without Zula's permission. And also, anytime there's a minor involved, I'm going to think about the welfare of the baby. There is a chance that this baby will be failure to thrive. The baby is not yet at that point. So I will be asking about the baby and how the baby's doing, just to make sure that I'm keeping up on that. Now, everything that we just did, that's the shortest part of the case conceptualization, because the whole point of the case conceptualization is for you to show me that you truly understand the theory and the theory base, right? All right, so we're going to do this with attachment theory, and I'm going to go through attachment theory and the main concepts. I am not hitting everything that you would hit, but I am getting to the main points. All right. So what I have to think about is basically using the theory, what is my overall understanding of the issue? Okay. All right. So Zula did not have a primary caregiver when she was young, before the age of 5, because she had multiple caregivers over time that changed. And her mother seemed to be working a lot. So the odds are she was not able to make an attachment with a primary caregiver. So that lack of consistency, I'm going to go through the stages of attachment really quick. That lack of consistency was an issue. Now, it's really easy, again, to bring in your biases here and blame Zula's mother for not being with her kid, right? But if you are trying to work 2 and 3 jobs just to pay rent, you do what you can. And Zula was not neglected. She had people watching her. It's just very difficult when you have very little money to have consistent and high quality caregivers. Okay, so we're not going to go blaming Zula's mom for any of this. We're just going to state the facts objectively. Okay, so she had a lack of consistency in caregiving because one caregiver's rules are going to be different from the next one, right? Everybody's going to have their own way of working with children. So the first stage was probably of attachment was probably not affected by the multiple caregivers because children at that age do not have a preference for a primary caregiver. But once Zula moved into stage 2, and she was unable to have a specific primary caregiver, the inconsistencies in her care made it difficult for her to begin to anticipate caregiver reactions to her behaviors, which caused her to have some issues with her attachment. In stage 3, as soon as she would as we move into stage 3, when she would get used to anticipating how a caregiver would react, the caregiver changed. And so her whole understanding of how the world works and how human relationships work changed every time a caregiver changed, right? So because of that, she began to develop a strong sense of independence, right? In stage 4, due to the multiple caregivers and the reciprocity that was not consistent. So she began to have difficulties because she was not able to anticipate how human relationships work based on her relationships at that age. Because of this, she had disrupted attachments. She had several disrupted attachments in childhood and older, right? So she didn't have a primary caregiver. Now, this is an assumption that she did not attach to her mother. I'm going to make that assumption. You don't always have all of the knowledge with a written case, but we're going to make that assumption that because she had multiple caregivers, she was not able to have a primary attachment, which caused a lot of problems with her understanding human relationships and how to communicate with others, which is the whole basis of attachment theory. Okay? Now, she had disrupted attachments in childhood, one, because of the caregivers, but also because at 12, and that's still childhood, she was removed from her brother, who I think was probably her only attachment, her only constant attachment once she was 4, right, once he was born. And the person that she took care of. So these disruptions in attachment, which could cause trauma, by the way, in terms of being taken away from her mother, being sent away, being taken away from her brother, but also the disruptions in attachment when she was younger, caused her to have anger issues towards others. And then you give an example, right? She had anger issues towards others. She got into a lot of fights. And the case noted that she didn't have very long-term relationships. That would make sense to me because she didn't have long-term relationships as a child other than her brother. And so the moment she begins to trust, the moment she begins to have an attachment with somebody, she's going to back off because she's afraid that they're going to leave, right? Or that something's going to happen. So rather than wait for that to happen to her, she would cause it. Makes a lot of sense. And because of this and her behaviors, the fights that she was having, her lack of relationships with others, I'm going to say that as a child, she had an avoidant attachment. Right? Now, within all of this, I'm giving examples from the case as to why I believe what I believe. Okay? So she had anger towards others, fights with others. She had a lot of aggression. She also had a lack of empathy with her saying, like, well, they should have listened to me, things like that. The only person I think she had empathy for was her brother, who she was then taken away from. Right? So I believe she had an avoidant attachment. As an adult, currently, I believe she has a dismissing attachment, right? She is unable to attach to others due to her lack of trust in others, stemming back from all of the stuff that we just discussed. And that goes back to her boyfriend. She wants to be, her sense of wanting to always be independent, to not need other people because other people will let her down. That makes a lot of sense because that's basically what happened to her over time. Even her mother let her down. And she has a very high self-esteem. She knows she's independent. She knows she can take care of herself. She knows she can do things. So the lack of trust in others and the high self-esteem is a dismissing attachment. Because of this dismissing attachment and the idea that she has to look out for herself, right? And her belief that she should be independent, she is independent, she needs to be independent. And her life lesson that her baby should also be independent. She's having difficulty bonding with her baby. Now, The attachment is from the baby to her. And the baby is not a client, so we're not talking about the baby's attachment right now. We're talking about the mother's bonding with the baby, and she's having difficulties. She does not see that as a problem, by the way. But from the theory base, it's important for her to bond with her baby so that she'll be an appropriate caregiver, a consistent caregiver, whatever that consistency looks like. She also has difficulty creating and maintaining relationships because of these issues, because every time she has a relationship, she'll back off, right, when she begins to trust somebody because she's afraid she's going to lose them and she doesn't want to be hurt, or she's going to lose her independence. So then you do a statement, right? The issue from the theory base. This is literally one sentence. So based on everything I just discussed, which would be a couple of pages of writing, based on everything I just discussed, the issue from the theory base is Zula has a dismissing attachment that is preventing her from bonding with her baby and also preventing her from having a support system and relationships with others. That's what the theory base would say. So you understand that her presenting problem and the issue from the client's point of view is different than the issue from the theory point of view, right? Now that I have a clear understanding based on my theory base of what's going on with the client, okay, and what the client wants, I need to come up with some long-term goals. Now, normally you would do this with the client, but we're writing these case conceptualizations out. So I'm going to give you some goals from Zula and some goals from me, all of which will be measurable. So from Zula, a long-term goal would be Zula will enroll in community college and graduate with a degree in nursing. That's a long-term goal. A short-term goal will be that Zula will find low-income, high-quality childcare so she has some time to herself to promote her independence. And that way, when she is with her baby, she will be more present and not be quite so overwhelmed and exhausted. This will provide a support system for her without her having to have emotionally intimate friendships. Okay, so that's the first step. We hope that she'll be able to find high quality childcare. There might have to be some discussions around high quality childcare means that your baby will have the same caregivers over time, that kind of stuff. Now, goals from me in the theory base. Okay, so remember, I'm taking everything from the theory base. Zula will increase her trust in others from a 1 currently to a 5. That's a long-term goal, and that's a pretty amazing long-term goal. In the short term, Zula will learn, it's not I will teach, it's Zula will learn 3 ways to bond with her baby and begin using those with her baby. Okay? I teach means it's from my point of view. It's actually supposed to be from Zula's point of view. So that's how you do goals. Alrighty? Alright. So now the techniques and methods need to come from the goals and the theory base. Like, how are you going to get to those goals? Alright? And they need to be, again, specific to the client. Right? So I can't just say, I'm going to be a safe base for Zula, because that's the attachment thing to do. Great. Why? What is the purpose? Why does she need that more than maybe another client, or what is specific about her? All right, so I would say, because Zula has never had, as far as we can tell, someone who is consistent in her life, who is there and who does what they say they're going to do when they say they're going to do. Remember, she has a lack of trust in others. I will make an extra effort to be consistent and empathetic and provide that safe base for Zula, regardless of how Zula reacts towards me, so that she can begin to trust others. That's how that is specific to the client. I will also use confrontations with Zula to confront her gently in the beginning when she does not take responsibility for her actions in relationships. This is positive and negative. So if she does something like make a connection with someone but minimizes that, I would confront her that is a positive thing she's doing. but also with like her boyfriend, for example, where she minimizes her effect on the relationship. Oh, he didn't like my independence. Maybe it's more about how when she begins to really attach to somebody, she gets scared. So I would confront those things. And then the third thing I would use is inner child work, because we are in attachment. Um, but why would you use that, right? And you can even say, I would use inner child work to move past trauma, to move through past trauma. That's still not specific enough for a client, for this client. You need to have it individualized for this client. So in order to help her heal from the trauma of multiple caregivers and also being separated from her brother and her mother, but more her brother probably, I will use inner child work to help her move through that trauma. Okay. Now, what professional information, what resources do I need in my work with Zula? I would like to do some inner child work with Zula, that was obvious from above, to help prepare her early attachment. So I would go to a workshop on inner child work. I would also read the book Attachment 60 Trauma-Informed Assessment and Treatment Interventions Across the Lifespan by Christina Reese to learn specific interventions to help Zula form relationships with others. So I'm not just stating what resource, I'm stating why I am using that one to help my knowledge with this client. I also read the book chapter Single Parent Families and In-Work Poverty to learn what Zula is going through and how best to help her, because I have not been a single parent and I do not have low socioeconomic status. So that is an oral case conceptualization. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead and upload those to the Cyber Cafe so that we can all be on the same page, okay?